So this is a tutorial based on how to draw water. And so what I've done here is I've already set up a quick sketch which shows a little flagstone surrounding here and like a little wooden platform running out here. So we could put in a couple of nail holes here to indicate that there's like some bar running along the outside of that, and maybe stick another bit just jutting out here to give us still a bit of variety. But this is basically going to be our water's edge. So everything in this region here, which is currently just plain white, is going to be water. Now there are a number of ways you can indicate water on a map of this scale. So this is basically a battle map scale, so each of these squares would be kind of roughly a 5-foot square. So for miniature play or something like that. So I've got my flagstones layer here. I'm going to start a new layer which is going to have the line art for my water. And all you really want to do here is just provide some kind of ripples which will show the edge of the water and just indicate to the viewer that this is water rather than land. So the key with this is to keep your lines long and smooth. You don't want any sharp lines, you don't want any jagged edges, so like if you're drawing very slowly then you'll see the line kind of wiggles around, and that's not going to work. So what we're going to do is just take nice quick lines, nice and smooth, like this. You want to kind of follow the contours of what the water's washing around, because these ripples are running up to the edge and they're going to be kind of rebanding off the edge. Now you don't want too many things which look like they're lining up like this, so I'm going to take that one away. Each one of these is a separate wave in effect. So something like that. So you're just looking for long, smooth, flowing lines. You want maybe the line weight to be a bit lighter than your hard edges. This is kind of additional detail rather than something just fundamental to the structure of the map. So something that's nice, smooth, long lines. So if you were doing a black and white line art map, that would be all you would need to show the water's edges. Now you can kind of give these ripples a bit of extra detail if you want to. You can put some kind of closer lines on the back here. I know there's certainly some guys who like doing that in their maps. It looks kind of nice. But, that's kind of extra credit. You can more or less see that it's water just from the basic lines to start off with. So now that we've got the lines drawn in, that's more or less all you would need to do if it's a black and white map, but this is going to be a color map, so I'm going to add a new layer underneath these lines here, so I'll call this my ripples layer. And I'm going to call this water color layer here. Now, one thing we want to make sure of is that the water only colors areas where the water is. So if you see this now, without the water turned on, we've got this nice white area here. So I can use the magic wand tool, that's this one here, and you can see that I've set it to only is going to select contiguous areas. Now what that means is when I click this region here, this is with the flagstones layer selected. Note the selection cares about what layer you've got selected. And clicking there, you can now see that it's just picked up the area in which the water is. And I'm going to just modify that and expand it. So I'm going to expand it by 1, so that we don't really have much in the way of little white edges around the edge here. And with that selection in place, I'm going to select the mask tool here. And that means that you can now just pressing Option, you can see what that is. So this is just the edge. So the color is only going to appear in the areas of the white areas on the mask. Right, so I'm going to select a nice big brush. I'm going to pick kind of a mid-blue. And I'm going to make that nice and large. There we go. So I could have just flood filled that, of course, but in this case I just wanted to do a bit like that, and then we're just going to add a little bit of variation in. That's maybe a bit too much. Just so there's a little bit of color variation in there. Okay, so that's our base color. Now if we turn the ripples back on, we can see that they don't look so great. But what we're going to do is add some white highlights. Now what we can do, I think we probably do want to do this, is just, we want to take it a bit off totally white and make it just a very light blue. Right, now, because these waves are highlights in the water, so they're going to pick up the light a bit more than others. I'm going to just add a little bit of light highlighting. So I'm turning the opacity of the brush right down, and I'm setting it to pressure sensitive. So this means it's going to be a very subtle highlight on top, or hopefully it'll be a fairly subtle highlight on top. So you can see it just starting to pick up a slightly brighter colour on the edge of the wave there. I'll go around and just highlight those quickly. Again, nice quick strokes, nothing too detailed, complicated. I'm not worrying too much about following the lines, but you see I'm doing the highlights on the side of the ripples that are away from the water's edge. This is basically because that gives the impression that the ripples are heading in towards the edge. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller, bump up the opacity a little bit so you can get some slightly brighter highlights along the edge here. There we go. So you can see this is just starting to pick up a bit more of the detail. Oh, that one went a bit too much over the edge. There we go. So just doing some undo steps to pull it back. You can see that starting to pick up there. Okay. So again, you can more or less leave it at that if you wanted to. It's quite nice, but it kind of feels a bit like the water's missing something that it could do with a bit more detail, some kind of texture or structure or something like that, because at the moment it still does look like we started off with just a flat pane of blue, and that doesn't really give us much room to experiment with. Now if I was doing this normally, I would be working on top of some kind of parchment background, and that would fill in the detail to just help it just have a bit more kind of crunch to it than it does at the moment. At the moment it just looks a bit flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a ripples texture. Now if you follow the tutorial from earlier on, you'll know where this came from. So I'm just going to select part of that, and I'm going to flick back to my map here. Just press Ctrl V to paste it in, and you can see that's now sitting obviously far bigger than this. So I'm going to transform that. Command T will get you the transform tool, so I'll shrink that down, and yeah, that kind of looks like the ripples I'm after. Right, now obviously we don't want just a massive black and white ripple texture here. We certainly don't want it covering the flagstones, so I'm actually going to have a number of things all building up to create my water layer again, rather than copying and pasting this mask onto this, so we've got a whole load of layers all masked out by the same mask. I'm going to just put those into a group, call this water colors, and I'm going to select and drag the mask up there. Right, that's now masked out that, but still, this is now a ripple layer which we don't really like the look of. It's just hard black and white. So I'm going to set that to overlay. Okay, that's pretty brutal. And I'm going to take that right down to 8%. Maybe a little more. Okay, so you can now see that there's kind of a nice ripple texture lying underneath our waves. And I'm going to set up a new layer above that, and on top of this one I'm going to just do a bit more work on the colors. So I'm going to set that to overlay. I'm going to go back to my brush tool. This time I'm going to go to something large and fuzzy. And I'm going to take a black and a white. So that's going to be my shadows, and this is going to be my highlights. So starting off with the shadows, I'm going to just start banging in some kind of darker, more intense blues down here. So you can see that what this does is it not only darkens it, but it's also bumping up the saturation a bit. Okay, that's certainly making the ripple effect a bit too dominant, so I'm going to pull that back a little. And then I'm going to just start adding in, well, let's put a little bit of shadow down the edges here. That should just drop it down beneath our flagstones a little bit. There we go. Okay, and then I want to pull back the highlights, so we're going to just start. Again, using a big fuzzy brush, we're not trying to add detail here, we're just trying to add kind of general structure and highlights. Okay, and that's just giving us a bit of texture really around the edge. So you can see the ripple effect is sitting in the background. They're not the dominant factor at all. That's the ripple's texture, and the waves on top are now pulled out, so they're kind of the dominant feature. And the brighter we make the lines around, the more we actually end up seeing the line work. So you don't want like black lines sitting on a really dark texture, because then it's hard to see them. You kind of lose the line work you put that work into in the first place. Yeah, maybe we will pull that back again. There we go. Okay, and so that's the water for this tutorial. I can show you a bit more about how to do the flagstones in a later one.